I'm over here with my good friend and dance partner Dawn at the classic 50s diner here in Fremont, California. A very popular 50s themed diner. And I'm here for a very specific reason. I'm going to read some letters printed in various news magazines and periodicals from the 1950s. Let me qualify this first. What I'm about to read is for historical purposes only. What I'm about to read does not reflect the views of myself or the contributors of this channel. This is Front Page Detective magazine. With a name like Front Page Detective, you can guess that it is a true crime publication. But this is from the 1950s, so true crime can't be crime like today, correct? So the first letter is from an issue dated November 1959, and the story itself occurred in the summer of 1959. And the letter is titled Allowed to Kill. Whenever I read stories about killers like Francis Bloeth, I get confused about the way our courts and prisons operate, if they operate at all. According to your story, Bloeth has been in and out of trouble for the past 12 years, ever since he was a 15-year-old boy. What really gets me is that he was obviously a habitual criminal with tendencies towards violence, and yet when he struck a woman over the head with a hammer, he was given a suspended sentence. The judge in that case needs his head examined. And then a year later, Bloeth was up to another assault case and didn't spend 1 day in jail. Bloeth's lawyers says his client once told the director of the state training school for boys in Warwick, New York, that he enjoyed killing. Wasn't it part of the director's job to see that this kind of person got treatment for his sick mind and be sent to a mental institution? 3 people are dead now because of all this indifference and stupidity on the part of so-called responsible officials. Bloeth was one criminal who apparently was allowed to break the law and assault people without punishment. It's no wonder he went off on a killing spree. He probably thought he'd get away with that too. And who knows, maybe he will. The letter was written by Mark Adler in Hempstead, New York. Yikes. This letter is in response to another letter published in February of 1959. Effective gun laws.
Mrs. William Young of Fort Collins, Colorado wants a workable gun law to prevent crimes in which handguns are involved. The Blotter, February, Front Page Detective, 1959. Well, I would recommend she try for a real gun law, such as the Sullivan Law of New York City. Certainly, in New York, it is not possible to buy small firearms without a permit, and over the years, this law has been tightened up more and more. The result? Well, New York statistics show that crimes in which handguns were involved have increased annually. It is a fact that the majority of those who scream for gun laws as a panacea for armed crime are those with very, very little knowledge of guns or of the circumstances involved when a crime is committed. Gun lovers, sportsmen, and target shooters can thank their lucky stars that our top men in the lawmaking business are usually intelligent and will bend no ear to such cries. Gary Sherman, Los Angeles, California.
And, as if in contrast to that previous letter, comes this March 14, 1959 editorial out of the Ithaca Journal. It reads in part, "There is nothing to prevent an unauthorized person from buying, borrowing, or begging a gun from a licensed owner, except the law, which too often fails to inhibit him. No such licensing law covers the purchase or use of rifles or shotguns. A minor can go with a parent to a store, pick out a gun, let his companion pay for it, and receive it as a gift on the way out. A criminal in this country must be stupid if he can't get a hold of a gun of some kind, a fact confirmed by the staggering number of homicides and holdups. Ithaca Journal, March 14, 1959. This letter is titled Laws Too Lenient, and the writer asked that his name be held upon request. I cannot become accustomed to the present generation of two-bit punks who have dedicated their lives to larceny and violence. I was once a young man, but I love to work, and no thought of violence ever entered my head. Laws are not tough enough. Many criminals are paroled who should not be paroled. I consider that every respectable citizen should have a loaded pistol in his home. If someone attempts to break into your home, do not give him a chance. Kill him. This is 1959, folks. So when we aren't eating 1950s style foods, we practice 1950s style dancing. 50s movie dancing, that is. The American Bandstand regulars obviously didn't dance like this. 1950s jitterbugging helps us to refocus when we need to contemplate over 1950s readings, and we sure needed to contemplate over some complex 50s era issues when we read letters concerning 50s era racially motivated restrictive covenants, not in the Deep South, but right here in the San Francisco Bay Area, with this example coming from the year 1952. We are deeply disturbed at the un-American and irreligious action taken by a group of neighbors in South San Francisco in denying the right of residents in their midst to a Chinese family. We deplore these manifestations of intolerance and bigotry because they play into the hands of enemies of democracy who will claim that our professions of equality and justice are a deception and a snare. We deplore them the more because they are a denial of the basic religious truths of the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. The Reverend Robert Moon of the Park Presidio United Church and Rabbi Saul White of Temple Beth Shalom. This letter is from Fred Wells from Oakland, California. All separate to the San Francisco Examiner. Why all this senseless talk about a Chinese family moving among a community of white people? I say, let all colors live in their own neighborhoods. Keep the black, red, yellow, and white races separated. Then let each elect their own way to run their personal affairs. This way, all property values will stay higher. Anyone with common sense knows anyone is happier among their own kind. A Negro doesn't want a white man for a neighbor. A Chinese man doesn't want a white man for a neighbor. Nor does a white man want either for a neighbor. So keep them separate, and everyone is happier. Fred Wells, Oakland, California. Well, even though that first letter was promising and hopeful in regards to our tolerance of each other as human beings, that second letter was, whoa, oh my God. Okay, I think I better stay clear of reading controversial letters in front of my dance partner, Dawn, before we go off to dance practice, at least for my personal safety. One thing that those of us who are fans of 1950s history and those who hold a nostalgic view of the 1950s can hopefully all agree on is that the most vulnerable among our population, the ones who are often targeted by violent criminals, such as the handicapped, the aged, women, and children, at least they were safer during the good old days of the 1950s. We certainly wouldn't find any letters from the 1950s voicing concerns regarding crimes against our most vulnerable. For that matter, it must be assumed that laws, and legal practices, as well as situations such as funding and populations within our facilities, would have been better managed during the 1950s. We certainly wouldn't find any letters concerning such situations as legal loopholes between the years 1950 to 1959. Or would we? May 19, 1957, Editorial, the Hartford Courant. Ex-convict George Davies, who admitted the slaying of 9-year-old Brenda Doucette last week, was paroled a year ago after serving 1/3 of a 3-year moral sentence. How many times must this ghastly postscript be written before an adequate program of protection for our children will be undertaken? Those of us who worked on this video are actually fans of 1950s history. Most of us got into this because we acknowledge and love the art of the 1950s, the fashions, the books and writings, the films and TV shows, the music of the 1950s, whether that be rock and roll, or for that matter, jazz and folk. But of course, a big emphasis on rock and roll. Our purpose in making this video is to show that 1950s society dealt with the same human concerns that all human societies have had to deal with. It is our belief that the nostalgic claim of the non-existence of certain types of issues and concerns, including violent crime, is actually not respectful to the concerns of 1950s society at that time as they were living it. We close out this video with a letter reading from author Richard Jacoby. He had written the biography of Salvador Agron, the 16-year-old gang leader known as the Capeman, convicted for the sad and tragic homicides of 16-year-olds Bobby Young and Tony Krzazinski in the Hell's Kitchen playground on August 30, 1959, which had occurred 5 days after an unrelated gang shooting of a 14-year-old on August 25th in Jamaica, Queens, and 7 days after several shootings that had occurred on August 23, 1959 in Manhattan's Lower East Side. Richard Jacoby reads the following autobiographical letter from Salvador Agron, written and published decades after he had been convicted. The letter shows that not everyone who grew up in the 1950s necessarily lived nor experienced life in the same way.
The letter I would like to read is something that Salvador Agron wrote to me about his experience and what he was called or named in the beginning. And here it is. I was a semi-illiterate kid of 16 years of age with the mentality of a 12-year-old in 1959 when I was in a gang fight in Hell's Kitchen that left 2 Anglo-Saxon American kids, both 16, dead and 1 severely wounded. I was a member of a teenage gang called the Vampires. I wore a black cape and carried a Mexican dagger. I was young and very ignorant. I had an umbrella which I gave to Tony Hernandez, and he gave me his black cape with a red satin lining. I put it on. Weapons were given out, and I chose a Mexican dagger. This had belonged to our president, Manny Ortega, and it was the same dagger used when we took our oath months ago in Central Park. It was an oath taken underneath a full moon, and so named our gang, the Vampires. The oath was taken by lifting the dagger up to the moon and swearing that we would, from that day onward, defend one another as brother and fellow vampires. The Hot Kings, another gang, had recently become a brother club of the vampires, and the other gangs involved with us had already been in existence for about 8 months. When I was arrested, I told the reporter, "I don't care if I burn, my mother can watch." My outfit attracted much public attention. The news media had a Roman holiday with me, calling me Capeman and publishing inflammatory articles which demanded my execution in the electric chair. My case quickly became a radical and political issue, even though it involved a street gang that mistakenly attacked non-gang kids. The Yankee press hurled racial epithets at all Puerto Ricans in New York City. I was tried, convicted, and sentenced to death. Convict and prison inmate were added to a long list of labels used to describe me during my life: premature infant, late walker, talker, religious fanatic, revolutionary, drug addict, psychopath, and juvenile delinquent. But what my life was really all about was nothing like just these words. It was more complicated, more confusing. In prison, I began to study, sharpen my mind, my memory, and question myself and the Capeman and Dracula legends that the media had built around my personality in order to fabricate a monster. I've come a long way from my childhood. I've been told my life is an inspiration to others. I don't know if it is or why, only that I lived it and it was very difficult. Lots of people have said I was a murderer and I deserve to die in the electric chair. But I say I dug my own grave and the state of New York has been trying to bury me in it ever since.
Very powerful stuff, sir. Very
Isn't
powerful.
that powerful? Yeah, and I think
powerful.
that really leads into just so many other things.
What interest do you have in modern day news and events today?
Right now?
Yeah,
Oh, I've got a lot of interest in it.
you would say. Does that match your interest in news and current events when you were 16?
I don't think so. I think when I was 16,
I didn't pay any attention at that age.
Yeah.
And I asked him, I said, when you were a teenager, did you pay attention to the news? Because the Michael Farmer murder, that was national news. It shows up in the San Francisco Chronicle. That means you could be here where I'm at and you would have seen it. The Capeman murders, that's also national news. It was also in the San Francisco Chronicle. And so was that Teresa G in the Lower East Side. All of that was national news. And I asked them, I said, well, you were a teenager in the 50s. And they said, no, we didn't pay attention to the news.
It's a fact. We didn't have time for that. We made our own news. But I believe the farmer killing garnered national attention, and so does the Capeman. It's you look at the victim, and then you look at the ethnic backgrounds as to the perpetrators. Michael Farmer would come out on the news, and the daily news at the time was son of a fireman. He's a first responder's son, so cops and firemen stuck together. Son of a fireman, polio victim. That stood up. Then the other one with the Capeman, you had these Puerto Rican kids going into a white neighborhood and attack innocent white kids. If it would have been black kids or Hispanic kids, it would have gotten the news. But that's the crossover between the ethnicity involved. That's what gave it national attention.
The racial component, then, you feel?
That's correct. Yeah. Otherwise, it would have gotten national news because these kids were killing each other constantly before that. Italians, the Irish, but when you get a Puerto Rican or black commit at that time of the 50s, things were quite different. Remember, Jackie Robinson just started playing Major Leagues 10 years before. So, and Sammy Davis was still not allowed to stay in a white hotel in Las Vegas. So things were quite different. So the fact that a black Hispanic killed a white kid with a background of a firefighter as a father, that gave it national attention.
David, can you tell us a little bit about your background, about Brooklyn Rumble, as well as what you currently have in the works and what other works are out for sale now?
My name is David Van Pelt, as you introduced me as, and I've been researching and writing about New York City youth gangs for about, I would say, 20 years. And it took me 15 years to research and write Brooklyn Rumble, and I finished that in 2018, and it's available on Amazon. And that book is about two gangs from Brooklyn called the Mau Maus and the Sand Street Angels. And since then, I continue to research. The topic still holds me. I still find it very interesting, and I'm currently working on writing a book about a member of a Harlem gang from 1945. So that's what I'm deeply involved in now, and I'm not sure when it will be out, but I know it won't take 15 years, so it should be a lot.
This talk, I call it generational gangsters, and we're going to use the Royal Knights as an example. The first ever report, newspaper report or police report of a zip gun was made in 1941 in a rumble between the Royal Knights and the mutineers in Harlem. The police used the term homemade gun, but we know that they were actually talking about a zip gun from the description in the two-column article and we have that. We have a copy of that. Then in 1955, C. Kilmer Myers mentions the Knights, and we perceive that these are the Royal Knights from the description that they themselves give to him. And they were the actual first group that he started dealing with. The first black group, he calls them the Knights, but we know that they are the Royal Knights, and he's dealing with them from 55 to 57. And of course, onward into all the way up to the Teresa G shooting of 59. And then we see the Royal Knights again in 1959 in a rumble at Morris High School between them and the Valiant Crowns.